Hello and welcome to Level Up by Forbes. Today's presentation, How to Build Confidence and Lead Yourself to Career Success, will be starting in just a few minutes. Before we begin, I want to cover a few housekeeping items. At the bottom of your audience console, there are multiple application widgets you can use throughout the webcast. If you have any questions during the webinar, you can click on the Q&A widget at the bottom. We do capture all submitted questions, so we'll be able to view these during the webcast, and we'll address as many as we can during the Q&A. If you have any technical difficulties, please click the Help widget. It has a question mark icon and covers common technical issues. So let's get started. Level Up by Forbes is a sub-brand for young professionals with focus on personal finance and career advice. You can follow us at Level Up on Facebook and our exclusive LinkedIn group. My name is Kim Horner, and I'm a social media editor here at Forbes, and I have the pleasure of introducing Angie Morgan, the founding partner of LeadStar, a leadership development consulting firm designed to help professionals understand how they can achieve greater success by implementing leadership practices to their work routines. She is also the New York Times and USA Today bestselling author of Spark, How to Lead Yourself and Others to Greater Success. Angie's leadership expertise formed after she graduated from the University of Michigan and served as an officer in the United States Marine Corps. She also holds an MBA from the Ross School of Business at the University of Michigan. Thank you so much for joining us today, Angie.
I am really excited to be here, Kim. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So before we get started with your presentation, we have a quick poll for everyone listening.
Okay.
What shakes your confidence? So take a few seconds to select one of these answers, everyone. What shakes your confidence? Not being prepared, lacking experience, imposter syndrome, other people, excessive worry, or all of the above?
I would say all of the above. That shakes my confidence just reading this.
I would have to say imposter syndrome for me personally, but let's see what everyone else had to say.
Wonderful. All of the above. Okay.
Okay, great. Yeah. But also not being prepared is also a big factor for people, in addition to all of these other things.
You know, it's interesting, Kim, as I'm looking at these answers too, is that there's things in the moment that shake your confidence, and then there's things that take time, like imposter syndrome. It's more of a long-term thing that you can work on, but there's also some quick fixes too with confidence building that can address some of these. So I look forward to jumping in.
Absolutely, and I'll let you take off from there.
Well, thank you, and thanks for everyone for participating today. I'm really excited to be here talking about the subjects of leadership and confidence, and we'll talk about their relationship. Leadership and confidence, they certainly can happen accidentally in all of us, but if you can imagine, what if you were purposefully developing your leadership skills as well as your confidence? I mean, I'm confident that all of our success would skyrocket. And so to set the stage for today, I want to inspire a bit of urgency. The time is now to both lead and develop your confidence and leadership skills. It's more than the old adage, there's no time like the present to build a new skill. Rather, I really think it's a workplace imperative. You know, the rate of change, the pace of business, the disruptions that technology is creating, all those demand that we step up to the plate and lead. So confidence and leadership, these skills aren't just nice to have, they're need to have in our business worlds and let alone your life. I'm sure you're going to see that the things we talk about today are just as relevant to what you're doing at work as to what you're doing in your time that you're not working. There's a popular acronym that's been circulating around the business community too, and this is helpful for context and understanding. It's called VUCA. It stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Now, its origins are in the military. I certainly heard about it when I was in the Marine Corps. But as I describe these words, I bet many characteristics summarize your work environment. Volatile, meaning that the work today isn't necessarily going to be we're not necessarily going to be doing the same work tomorrow. Uncertain, like if we take a risk, we're not certain that it's going to play out. Complex, there's no size A solution for a size A problem. And ambiguous, meaning that no one is going to solve our challenges. It's on us, and the crystal ball we've been carrying around has suddenly become a bit murky. So if you live in this VUCA world, which I bet elements definitely describe the world that you live in, then recognize that there's so much that you cannot control. But the one thing that you can control is your consistent development of your leadership skills. And the leadership development landscape has certainly changed in the past 13 years. For example, I used to take a lot of calls from managers asking my firm to develop the leadership skills among just their senior and mid-level management employees. And today I'm taking calls from managers asking for their entire organization to develop their leadership skills. This phrase, leadership at all levels, is really being promoted to talk and address to the VUCA environment that many of us are experiencing. And so what that really means for businesses and also for you is that there's an opportunity to rethink how you engage in your leadership development. And also, too, as an opportunity for you to rethink how leadership is defined. I like to think of leadership not as a noun, not like positional authority. I like to think about leadership as a verb. It's a behavior. It's an action. So I'm going to have you look at this picture on the left. And if I were to ask you, can you pick out the leader in that image? You might instinctively choose the person at the head of the line, because I think that's how we're kind of socialized to think about leadership, is they're the one leading the way. But if I were to ask you to make an argument for the second person, the one in the middle, the one in the end, and ask you to tell me how they're leading, I bet you'd come up with some answers. The middle person, for example, leads by having a direct link to the head of the line and insight into the back. They relay messages forward, and they have a real good sense of how the team is doing. The one at the back could actually be the one in charge, too. They could be the manager. Maybe they're giving somebody else the opportunity to develop their head-of-the-line skills for the day. And I really think this image reinforces that leadership can happen anywhere. But what's most important for you, I think, and relevant, is that no one can make you a leader. You're not chosen to be a leader. It's not a position that's anointed to you. Sure, you can get a promotion into management, but management and leadership are different. You, in fact, choose to lead. So a clear way to distinguish between management and leadership is that you manage things like processes, budgets, staffing, things, intangible things, and leadership is about people. And to really understand leadership, you have to confront the three biggest myths about it. So I define a leader as someone who influences outcomes and inspires others. Two things. Easy said, harder sometimes to demonstrate, influence and inspiration. But when we think about leadership often in the business world, there's some myths about it that can really confuse people and make them question, am I a leader or aren't I? So the first myth is that leaders are born. The second one is that leaders trust their instincts. And the third one is that a title makes you a leader. So before we go talking about confidence, I just want to really tackle these myths because they could be holding you back from really expressing yourself as a leader. So let's take the first one. And I think okay, there we go. Sorry, my slide in coordination with my talking kind of got away from me. So this is the first myth. So leaders aren't just born, they're made, and here's the proof. So the University of Minnesota, they've been conducting some interesting research on identical twins, specifically ones separated at birth. Through their methods, they discovered that we're born with about 30% of our leadership ability. This is in the form of intelligence, extroversion, and I hate that this is on the slide, but it's true, like attractiveness, good looks. If you've ever wondered why we care so much about what Hollywood has to say about anything, now you know. It has to do with attractiveness. But the thing about influence is that it's easy come, easy go. So as soon as some celebrities start talking, we can discern quickly how they're actually going to influence us or not. And really, this is only like 30% of the equation. So considering that you're listening to a webinar on leadership in your discretionary time, I'm just going to make a judgment that you've likely hit the jackpot on this 30%. So thank your parents. You had nothing to do with it. They gifted you with that 30% of really good raw material. But let's then talk about the 70%. And these are qualities that you can develop throughout your career. It's your mindset, it's your credibility, it's your confidence, of course, too. We call these spark qualities, and I've written about 7 of them in the book Spark. So this should take care of myth number 1, right, that leaders are born. Well, that's not necessarily true. They're not just born. More importantly, they're made, and there should be a heavy emphasis on the made component. So this is Then myth number 2, leaders trust their instincts. Not necessarily. Not all of our instincts serve us well. Remember when we were kids in grade school and the firemen came to the classroom and told us to stop, drop, and roll? Well, why did they do that? Well, because they knew that our instincts in the moment, if our clothes were on fire, were going to lead us to the best decisions. We wouldn't put out the fire. We'd be running around like crazy looking for a bucket of water. The thing we should do would be the last thing on our mind, stop, drop, and roll. So we're all adults, right? And guess what? Our instincts can be wrong, and compounding this challenge is that we've been developing behaviors, too, that also don't serve us best. So we have to engage in processes, I like to call them executive function, cognitive process, that help us override our instincts so we can replace some of our instinctual responses with learned leadership responses. The first, get these up here for you, the first cognitive process is cognitive flexibility. And this means that we have to try new approaches to people. Leadership is about people. You influence and inspire people. I think we're all really good at flexibility with some of the things that we have to manage, like if the caterer doesn't show up, we're quick to call for a pizza. But do we apply that level of flexibility, creative problem solving, to people? You know, with people, we just get into habits. We get into grooves. We approach them the same way and expect different results. The realization is that we can't change other people, but we can change how we engage others. And when we try to be more creative with our problem solving, we can be finding ourselves in a better position of influence. So paying attention to that process, cognitive flexibility, that allows us to challenge an instinct and get to a better result. There's also cognitive discipline. And what this really means is our ability to not act on our instincts or reactions. So if you've ever sent an email or text out of anger, you know perhaps that wasn't the best decision. But had you taken a pause before hitting return, you may have achieved a better outcome. So again, putting that pause, holding your instinct, and inserting a learned leadership response can help put you in a better position. So myth number 2, leaders challenge their instincts. Our leaders trust their instincts. Wrong. Leaders have to challenge their instincts to get to a better result. And the final one that we talked about, the third myth, was that leadership is a title. Not true. You develop your leadership by developing your self-awareness. It's not, again, nobody can make you a leader. You make you a leader. And it starts with expanding your knowledge of yourself. So how well do you know you? This knowledge allows you to know what you need to do to manage in order to grow and develop your leadership skills. You know, for example, thinking about things that always need to get managed. I'm naturally impatient. I guess I've known this about myself for quite some time, but I didn't really know its impact on others until about a decade ago when the co-founder of LeadStar told me that it was annoying and obnoxious and it makes her impatient. And that was really great to hear because that knowledge allowed me to grow and develop. I now work on my impatience so it doesn't impact other people and try to mask some of those visible signs that can be disturbing or off-putting. And so think about you right now, too. How well do you know you, and how well do you take effort to manage that knowledge about you? When I think of how to start developing self-awareness, I think of a model called the Johari Windows that shares there are 4 aspects of information that help us best understand ourselves. The first is what you know and everyone knows. These are truths, right? And then there's also this other aspect of information, what you know and no one knows. These are your secrets. There's also this one, what you don't know and no one knows. You might think that, gosh, is this about looking into the future and trying to predict it or call it? Not necessarily. It's that, somebody here on this line, you could have a talent that just hasn't been uncovered. You could be perhaps the best opera singer or best guitar, player in the world. You've just never really explored those musical talents. And that can be really exciting, at this early stage of your career, that there's a lot about you that you don't know and a lot about what we think about ourselves. I mean, we might not even author those thoughts. So I get excited when I think about that because we all have a tremendous amount of growth, so curiosity can lead the way. So there's this 4th aspect of information, and it's not here to make you paranoid, what you don't know and everyone else knows about you. I think another thing that excites me as a leader is that sometimes other people have cues and clues of ways that I can grow and develop and get better. And it's up to me as a leader to try to uncover what those are so I can go back to that first quadrant, what you know and everyone knows, and expand it. So when I'm looking at the Johari window, in a perfect world, not all these 4 windows or aspects of self-awareness should be equal. As leaders, we should constantly be expanding the what you know and everyone knows, because that's where trust and relationships happen. Leadership is about relationships, and the more you know, the more you share, and the more comfortable people feel giving you feedback, not only expands your self-awareness and gives you ideas on what you can manage, but it builds and grows your relationships. And that's really where the magic of influence and inspiration can happen. So let's keep on continuing. In Spark, as we think about, leadership is about influence and inspiration. You might be wondering, what are some of the behaviors then that you can be intentionally developing to grow and develop your leadership skills? In Spark, we detail 7 of them, such as the concept of credibility, because that's where trust really happens. We all know if we don't trust somebody, there's really no relationship there. Personal accountability, confidence and consistency, and helping, really build teamwork. We talk about all those things. But I really want to home in, for the benefit of our time today, on the concept of confidence, because I think it impacts all of us. And what's interesting is that it determines the goals we seek, how we rebound from failure, the results you achieve or don't achieve. There's a great quote by Henry Ford, and it's, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. So if we think about leadership, it's our ability to influence and inspire. If we're growing our confidence in tandem, we're going to find greater opportunities growing and coming our way as a result of it. But before we jump in, I want to ask you, where do you think confidence comes from? Is it a born with it trait? You either have it or you don't, kind of like, some of those qualities earlier, like extroversion, or is it, appearance and things like that? Is it luck or magic? Does it just kind of happen out of nowhere? Is it something that you can intentionally develop, or are you not really sure? So, Kim, do you want to help reveal the poll for this? Or before we share, Kim, I'd love to hear from you. What do you think your answer is to this question?
I always used to think confidence was something you were just born with, but I'm starting to think that might not be true. Let's see what everyone else thinks.
Okay, great. I love it.
Great. So
Good.
90% developed over time. That's the right answer.
It is, and sometimes it isn't too, but it is the right answer with it. But it's funny. I think there's a nature of born with it. There's a nature of nurturing, right, that your parents or, key mentors around you can help you develop. But what I find most interesting about confidence is that it's very personal. You control it. And the most valuable thing I've learned about confidence is that it's an emotion, which can help you understand why it's there and why, or perhaps it's not there when you need it the most. Confidence is not a skill that you necessarily get better at time, like math. I think you get better with more practice. Confidence is an emotion, and like any other emotion, it has to be managed. It can be high, it can be low, it can be influenced externally, but it can be managed internally, and so the power is with everyone there. So in Spark, we wrote about 4 confidence building actions you can take. So going back from where we start, leadership isn't a noun, it's a verb. And if it's a verb, there are actions that can help you become a stronger leader. And so Spark, we write about these 4 actions, but I'm going to highlight them for you today so you can start to think about how you can develop this quality intentionally on your leadership journey. And so way back then, I missed one of my slides, so it's not here, but I'm going to talk about it today. And hold on, I'm going to push it up here, so thank you so much for this. It was slide number 10. Kim, okay, perfect. Can you help me, Kim, find slide number 10?
There it is.
Okay, great. If you could get us there. The first way to build your confidence is by experiencing your success, which is different than achieving success. It's experiencing success. And I'll talk about the nuance in a second. So again, I'm going to try to get this for you so you can see it and perhaps write it down. And I'll let you, Kim, take that so I Don't have to fumble with it. Okay, let's talk about experiencing success, not achieving. I think everybody on this call has achieved success, right? You've, whether it's gotten to the right school, passed the right tests, got the great opportunity, great. So you've done things in your life that have pushed you along a continuum. So you've achieved, but have you experienced? This might sound nuanced, but let me explain the difference. When you experience success, you're able to acknowledge that what you have done was through your own volition, your control, and you achieved it versus luck or happenstance or right place in the right time. And over your career, because of your direct acknowledgement that your actions produce a positive result, you grow confidence. And more importantly, that you thwart off this imposter syndrome. You may have heard about it in the past, imposter syndrome. It's feeling like you've risen to a level of achievement, but none of what has gotten you there was because of your own either will or hard work or luck. It was one of those things that you deflect. So again, imposter syndrome, it's not taking the time to acknowledge that what you've done is because of your efforts. And so success doesn't really feel real. I've met a lot of successful, talented leaders, and what I find interesting is that many of them have had no problem with achieving, but along the way they didn't take that moment to pause, stop, and reflect, and just say, you know what, I did that, that's good, that was successful. When you don't do that, over time, blowing past milestones, you overlook the opportunity to acknowledge your role in the success you achieved. So we need to be able to hallmark those moments, or just mentally bookmark those moments, because we're going to need them for the future. We're going to need them when we're about to do something that we've never done before, and we need to have the emotional energy to prepare ourselves for it. We need to have these moments to build our confidence and say, you know what, right now is really tough, but I've done this before and I can do it again. Confidence is a head game. And so just being able to have those ready reference points can get you to be in a position where you can motivate yourself to see success, not worry about possible failure. Will you always win? Not necessarily, but your success will be much greater if you can at least get yourself and your confidence in the right space. So that's number one, and I'm going to go to slide number 19 now. Let's see if I can go there. Okay, great. So the second way to develop your confidence is develop positive self-appraisals. And this is really self-talk. But how often do you pay attention to the words that are rattling around your head when you're going to a moment where you're going to be tested? Confidence, it's an interesting way to describe it. It's called self-efficacy. It's your belief that you can achieve the task at hand. So think about the last time you really felt tested. Maybe it was a job interview. Maybe it was a promotion opportunity. Maybe it was, a race that you were going to run on the weekend, or maybe it was something else in your life that you really just were struggling to muster confidence for. What was going on in your mind? Were you on your side, or were you talking yourself out of it? Like, think about that job interview. I can do this. Everything about my resume says that I deserve this job, or, geez, I'm just really lucky to be here. I hope I do well. The difference between what you tell yourself has a direct influence over the results you're seeking. So pay attention to your self-appraisals. I mean, this is the one that gets away from me, is just constantly having to catch myself, building myself, or breaking myself down versus building myself up in moments when I need my confidence the most. If you could remember Saturday Night Live, there used to be this wonderful character. He's now a U.S. Senator, Al Franken. His character was Stuart Smalley, and he was a self-help guru, and he used to go off and look in the mirror and say, you're good enough, you're smart enough, people like me. But the reality is, like, those moments, those Stuart Smalley moments, really can make a difference to us. So next time you feel doubt or insecurity or concern or worry, go in the corner and get yourself back. Have that positive self-appraisal moment, because it makes a difference. And this plays off the first one, experiencing success, because if you can remember, versus thinking about all the times you've failed, go back and think about all the times you've succeeded. That gets you mentally in the game. And this is the other way to grow and develop your confidence, surround yourself with positive role models. I recognize that the majority of people we surround ourselves with day in and day out, we have not had a hand in choosing. So it's hard to say surround yourself only with positive role models because that's just impossible. But you can choose to select whose opinion you allow to influence the very positive, the very personal opinion of yourself. If it is anyone and everyone, your confidence is going to go on a roller coaster. But if it's those key people whose opinions you care about, they can keep you in check. They give you valuable guidance. They're on your side. They're the trusted ones you need to listen to. But if it's that, jerk barista at the coffee shop or the person who cuts you off and it shakes your confidence for a day or that random, Facebook response or tweet that you picked up, if it's anyone and everyone, you're going to really find yourself struggling with confidence. So the action here is, who are those people? If you're the CEO of you, who are those people that you allow to sit around you and direct and guide you? Are they on your side? Do they have your best interest at heart? And if you say, you know what, I just don't have enough positive role models, that's an action item. Find them. Get them. If your organization doesn't have a mentoring program, seek outside your organization. Go to networking events. There are people at this stage in your career whose advice you can grow and benefit from versus shrink and lose confidence from. So find them. The last spark action related to building your confidence is just managing fear, worry, insecurity. These are common emotions that we all have. I think about that concept of fear. When I was training to become a Marine Corps officer, we had to realize that fear is among all of us. We all have fear. We can't be paralyzed by it. Think about firemen, going back to another fireman example. I'm sure they have fear running into a burning building, whereas everybody else is running away. But what allows them to harness their fears and not be driven and ruled by them is courage. It's the anecdote of courage. What you want on the other side is going to be driven by your level of courage despite your fears. So fear and then worry. And the interesting thing about the confidence-killing emotion of worry is that we all worry, but often what we worry about isn't even going to happen. It's just things that we stew over, ruminate, and it really just impacts our ability to focus on our confidence in the moment. So really great question to ask yourself. If you find yourself excessively worrying about, something that's going to happen, challenge yourself. Is this real? Can this even be possible? And what do I need to do about it, or what can I do about it right now? And if you can just kind of give yourself that test, you can find actions that can help you overcome worries in the moment. And then finally, insecurity. We all have insecurities, and insecurity is often coming from when we compare ourselves to other people. I had a very great mentor tell me early on in my career that, Angie, you're never going to be better than anyone else around you. There's going to be people who are more attractive than you, who are going to make more money than you, or are going to be more successful than you, and you're going to try to find yourself at some point running in those races. It's not a race. Be better than you. That's the race that you can win every single day. So insecurity, it's when we look and try to compare ourselves to other people. That's just not even a fair comparison because we're going to give them an advantage anyway. So to counter insecurity, which is often too connected to the imposter syndrome, go back to what we talked about, those positive self-appraisals. Remind yourself of your talents. Remind yourself of your successes. And recognize that, you have the ability, to be present in the moment and focus your attention and energy on that. So with LeadStar, our firm, we've really focused on helping individuals like yourselves build not just their confidence, their leadership skills. And I'm going to invite you to hold on. Can you get slide number 22? Nothing is showing up on my screen. This could totally be me, speaking of confidence killing, this could totally be me being inept with the technology for those of you who are on the call today.
I think the slide is up now. Sorry about that. I think the slide is up now.
Okay, great. Thanks. I don't see it, but that doesn't mean anything. Is this, can you tell me what slide is up, Kim?
Sure. The Spark Experience, a leadership book study is up.
Great. Thank you so much. So I'll let you take it. I'll continue talking, and then I'll let you take the slide controls from here. So I want to share that if you go to sparkslead.us, so sparkslead.us, there are activities, exercises that are companions to the Spark book that can help you take the content that we're writing about in Spark and spend some time reflecting on what the material is, where you are, and how you can grow and develop not just your confidence skills, but also your leadership skills. The interesting thing about learning and developing is that, you certainly reading a book gives you knowledge, but the greatest growth comes from what you're actually going to do with that. You can't necessarily read a book on swimming and jump in the pool and think you can swim, or same with golf, right? Read a book on golf and think that you're going to get a hole-in-one. You have to think about doing and treating it as a verb and gaining experiences. So if you go to sparkslead.us, there's a ton of resources for you to help you intentionally grow and develop your leadership skills. And there's ways that you can demonstrate your leadership in your organization by hosting book clubs and mini learning sessions, because it's nice, of course, when there's one leader in an organization. But if you can influence other leaders in your organization, I think you can really help change the tone of a conversation that you have in your professional environment. And my final pitch will be the next slide, and that is just a Spark. I hope it's a good book. I shouldn't say it's a great book, but it's certainly my book. I think the feedback we've been getting is it just helps people understand how to grow and develop personal leadership skills in ways that aren't related to title or, place on an organization chart. Simple things that you can do every single day to better express your leadership. So with that, thank you, Kim, for the opportunity. I'll let you close, and I'm here to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you so much. And I just wanted to tell everyone listening that the link to the 21-page group leader kit and the link to the book is in your resources panel. So you can get those links right there. And finally, I wanted to offer everyone who listened today, everyone who's registered with the webinar is eligible for a free trial of Forbes magazine. All the advice Angie shared today was definitely helpful, and it will help you build the confidence you need to advance your career. But Forbes offers a ton of other stories and insights to help you on that path as well. To take advantage of this offer, go to www.forbesmagazine.com/levelup, and this link is also in your resources panel. Now we're getting lots of questions in. Please ask your questions for Angie, and we'll get to as many as we can. The first question that we got in right before the webinar started, Angie, would practicing mindfulness be beneficial at all in this confidence journey that we're all going to take together?
Great question. I know that that's a really big topic on many of our clients right now is, mindfulness meditation, and really that's about attention focus. And so when you think about, confidence, being an emotion, and, harnessing your emotions in the moment when you need confidence the most, I would say, yeah, absolutely. If you participate in mindfulness meditation, it's a really great way, too, to help get more focus, too, on some of those cognitive processes that we talked about. And there's a really great book on mindful meditation. It's called Search Inside Yourself. It's one of the engineers at Google wrote it, and I thought it was a really great example of the relationship between meditation and, positive leadership development. So definitely, I think that's a topic that naturally correlates with you growing and developing your leadership skills and, in turn, building your confidence.
Great advice. How does someone overcome stage fright or fear of public speaking? I know right now we're kind of speaking to a large audience, you and I.
Yeah.
Glitches happen. Slides don't come up when they're supposed to. How do you overcome that fear?
So this is the answer that I hate, but it's the best one that I can think of: practice. It really comes down to practice. So if you are nervous about public speaking or giving presentations, the best way around it is just constantly practicing and memorizing. I have a dear friend of mine who is an actor who's transitioned to doing more training and development work, and he just reminded me recently that if you can memorize and know what you're about to say, that in the moment you're not focused on the slides or the content that you're delivering, you can focus on other things, like how you're saying it, using words differently. And so practice repetition. Even if it's something, like for me, when I do a lot of presentations, I always like to do dry runs beforehand, but I also like to talk to myself. I always talk to myself because you sometimes find, too, like what you think sounds differently than what you say, or what you write sounds differently what you say. So people might think you're crazy talking to yourself, but I really feel that's a great way to improve upon your presentation skills.
And sort of building off of that, if someone is more soft-spoken, we know that can sometimes be seen as a weakness in many positions. How do you overcome that, and what advice do you have for someone who's soft-spoken?
That's a really important question. Just to give you perspective, and I'm 5'3". I've been accused of being soft-spoken before, and then I had to serve in the Marine Corps, and so there's 180,000 Marines. 1,000 are female officers, and not many look like me or sound like me or behave like me. And I think sometimes you can get intimidated and focus on what you're not. But when you really start to appreciate what you are and what you have of value, and thinking about different ways to demonstrate your talents and capabilities and your credibility, you can really start to break through on some of those things that maybe you feel sometimes intimidated by. And so I think of that for any skill, like when you start to think about what you don't have enough of, you can sometimes grow some really deep insecurities with that. But going back to self-awareness, when you remind yourself of what you have and try to lead with that, you start to appreciate, how you can be of influence in your environment. In Spark, I talk a lot about credibility right up front, and I think, again, there's so much you can't control, but you can show how you contribute credibly to organizations every single day. And I think that those are the behaviors that people value most in organizations. I may not be the most extroverted or, quick on my feet, but this is who I am. And if you can grow confident with that, others will see the value in you. And if they don't, forget about them. So at least don't let them influence your positive opinion of yourself.
So true. What percentage of executives would you say struggle with imposter syndrome? Obviously, you probably don't have the real number off the top of your head, but if you could kind of estimate, would you say most executives deal with this issue?
I would say more women executives deal with the imposter syndrome than men do. I think that women, we're often, for those women, and I think this is very, very important too for men and the audience to hear as well. Women, our styles are more teamwork and us-oriented. I think that comes from just some of the nurturing roles that we fill. So we share successes, sometimes to the point of not attributing success to our own doing. And so I think for women, don't deflect success. Don't brag about it, certainly. I mean, be modest in that regard, but be mindful that, sometimes deflection, you're denying yourself the opportunity to experience that in the moment. And I think for the men in this group, if you manage or if you supervise, or one day you will probably, or work with women, that this is an issue that a lot of women struggle with. So don't let women deflect their success. Pause and say, you know what, you did this. Like, don't knock your contributions. You did this. Help pinpoint those achievements. But I'll say it's men too. I mean, I have a really dear friend of mine. He is a fighter pilot, amazing, talented person. If you were to read his resume, you would be like, whoa, you are quite the incredible person. But I know that he struggles with his success. He had no problem achieving, but experiencing, and oftentimes, again, those insecurities come up. So I don't have a percentage, probably a long answer to your question. I would say that if I were to put a tag on it, I'd say probably more than 50%, but more women than men.
Wow, interesting. How would you define the difference between a leader and a manager?
I think there's a great quote by Admiral Grace Hopper. You manage things, you lead people. So a manager is a position on an organization chart, very important role. A leader, though, can be anyone. You can influence and inspire wherever you are. And it's wonderful, right, when you work with a manager who is a leader, who just knows how to influence and inspire, but that's not always the case. I mean, I'm sure somebody on this webinar today has had a bad boss. And if I could redeem them or attempt to redeem them, it wasn't that they were necessarily a bad person. They just didn't know how to lead people. They didn't know how to build connections. And I think that's often because businesses and organizations prioritize individual contributors. They put them in a managers and supervisor roles, and they don't know how to lead yet. They hadn't developed those skills. So the opportunity, I think, for everybody on this call is thinking about how to lead through influence and be that inspiration. Maybe you may not see it elsewhere in your organization, but that will help you, position yourself as a spark and for continued success. But more importantly, if you start building these skills now, by the time you get the promotion, you're going to be ready to take on other responsibilities and be a strong leader.
So what if you work for a boss who regularly is zapping your confidence? How would you deal with that? I know nobody here at Forbes, but I know that I've had this issue in the past, and I'm sure other people have had bad bosses. How do you prevent them from zapping your confidence?
So it goes back to, I think first and foremost, if it's a toxic relationship, get out of it. Do whatever you have to do to get out of it. So that would be one. If it's just somebody who's a manager and a poor leader, that's another thing. Try to find somebody else within your organization that you can go to that's a positive influence on you, and that's seeking out maybe an informal mentoring role. One thing I will warn people about is don't talk bad about that person to other people. So again, keep that, don't throw your boss under the bus with your colleagues, because you don't want to start that level of toxicity in the organization, but really find to seek out that mentor. And you also have to ask yourself, how much are you willing to tolerate? Your direct manager has so much influence over your life. And if it's a bad relationship, break up from it, because it's only impacting you and your career development. And so that would be my guidance for you. But, if there are things that you two can work upon, like maybe your boss is overly critical and you really like them, though, like you're growing from the experience, have the confidence to be able to say, you know what, I want to work on this relationship, but I find that you're highly critical of my work in areas that, again, it's more critical than praise. And try having that conversation. I think a lot of managers are open to that type of feedback, and they can change their style to build a connection and relationship to you. I always say to people, too, if you like what you're doing, and for the most part you like your job, give your manager a chance to redeem themselves. Don't just quit.
That's excellent advice. So say on the flip side of that, if you feel like you're ready for a more managerial role, more of a leadership role, how would you recommend somebody, what steps can they take to show that they're ready to lead a group forward?
So it's interesting you asked that question, because I'm putting together for a large oil and gas company a leadership development program, and I was asking one of the managers input on what makes a star employee. And I think it's actually pretty universal of what makes somebody stand out in their career. I think it's always, it's a couple things. Certainly, the behaviors that we write in Spark, right? But I want to go very specifically. If you're looking to stand out in your career, don't just do what is asked, do more than what is asked. That makes you a standout. Take initiative. If somebody is asking for something, go above and beyond to show you asked for this, but then I also thought you might want this. That makes you show that you're thinking ahead. Always too, anticipate what people need. Like your manager or supervisor, always kind of try to get in their head and think about what's going on in their world. What do they need right now from me? And so don't wait around to be told. Now, listen, if you really need that direction and guidance, that's one thing. But if you've been growing in your career for quite some time, don't wait around to be told. Go above and beyond, and that's a discipline. It's just constantly, again, thinking about the cognitive discipline. Don't just answer the question. Go above and beyond and give them this, think about the solution and plus what more you can do for them. I think that helps people really stand out. A couple other things, too, that are really important at this stage of your career is, trying to direct your own learning and development. So not just waiting for, your manager to say, well, gosh, our company is offering this training and development. Do you want to go to this? I would really urge you and encourage you to start thinking about other events in your community that you can go to. Maybe there's networking conferences. Maybe there's something at the Chamber of Commerce. Don't wait for people to help you develop your leadership skills. Really take ownership of your own development. Read. Don't wait for book recommendations. Go to conferences. And again, you're doing something like this right now. And even with this and the other great level up courses that you've been taking, share the material with your manager. Let them know that you're thinking beyond your role and responsibility. You're thinking about your career. I think that those are all things that stand out.
So adding to that, how do you get over the fear of disappointment or failure? This has happened to me in the past. I'm sure it's happened to lots of other people. If, fear of disappointment is just holding you back, how would you get over that?
So, how do you rebound from failures? And just think about, failure is only failure when it's final. I've made colossal failures in my life. I've ran a business for 14 years. I've never missed payroll, but I've let my family down because, revenue wasn't where it was, needed to be, and I needed to work harder or longer. And, I think you just have to accept that as part of the journey. How do you grow and develop? I'm sure everybody on this call right now, you have learned and grown more from your failures than your successes. So don't be shy of them. And when they happen, hold yourself accountable to doing some sort of reflection on what happened and learn and grow from it. I don't think we should hide from them. And I'm not saying tomorrow make as many failures as possible. But if you're not failing, you're not growing. And so I think sometimes in our work environment, we kind of shy away from those risks because we don't want to disappoint ourselves. But let's get out of our own bubble. That's not where we grow and develop. So how do you get over it? It's self-talk. I think that's...
Yeah, absolutely. What advice do you have for young entrepreneurs in their 20s, early 30s, being taken seriously in, an environment where it's more established people?
I feel like the best thing I can offer there is know your stuff, back and forth. I think that's it. It's credibility. Be credible to people. Credibility is two components. There's one that's character, are you a good person? Chances are you are, but we talk about that in Spark too. How is your character? Are you a person of integrity? But then the second piece of that is competence. How do you build your competence? And we talked in Spark about 4 different ways. One is minding your say-do gap, keeping the space between your actions and words as close as possible. And 2, that helps, people be inspired by you. But also, 2, with that competence component, it's just know your stuff, cold. And I think part of that, too, to help spending some time outside of yourself. I always think about, if a relationship isn't working, I try to think in advance, but maybe in the moment as well. How are they measuring my competence right now? What criteria are they looking at to determine whether or not I am competent? And what do I need to do to present myself to meet those bars that they've already put in front of me? And it's not that I have to change myself, but it might mean that I have to, change my tact and approach.
Absolutely. How would you balance, the fine line between being confident or, going over the line and appearing almost arrogant? How do you balance that?
It goes back to finding those mentors, those people who do keep you in check. I think that we all need people in our life. There might be people, there's nobody who's going to tell me what I am or what I am not. Well, it's probably you're arrogant. I think we all need people who can be truth brokers with us. And the challenge sometimes is, do you have those? And so I think going back to mentors, and I keep saying this mentoring concept, and I've seen some questions up there as well. Mentors can be your family members. They can be professional colleagues. They can be friends, even for that matter. But or even our managers can be engaged in mentoring. And, having a mentor isn't getting a proposal for marriage. It's just about having a professional relationship with somebody who can weigh in. So part of overconfidence and to avoid it is even just to ask, your colleagues or your boss, say, how am I showing up at work? What can I be doing differently? What can I be doing better? And if you and I think another great way to test to see if you really are of influence of other people is really asking yourself, do people come to you with their problems? Because if nobody is coming to you with your problems, there might be something that you're doing that's putting them off. It could be arrogance.
So sort of on the other side of that, what's your best advice for finding confidence when you stand out in the room? Maybe say you're the only woman or you're the youngest. How would you handle that?
Yeah, that's okay. I'm laughing because I can easily see that for people. That's been an issue for me in my own life. It's like not to be distracted by your differences. And like going back to those insecurities, because if you look around a room and perhaps you're the only minority, or you're the only woman, or you're the only male for that matter. I talked to my husband a lot about this. He's been working with a lot of women lately, and it's one of those things. Like anytime you feel like you're the minority in the group, you start to wonder what's wrong with me, and just stop those tracks, that talk track, and it's where it is, and kind of remind yourself what's right with me, and be proud of that, and be owning it. There's other things, too, that you can do, going back to that credibility question. What do I need to be credible among these people without fundamentally changing who I am as an individual? Because what you don't want to do is change who you are to meet a group's needs, because then you're playing, you're acting, and there's inauthenticity is really off-putting.
That's so true. You definitely want to be yourself, even if you feel like the odd one out. You're serving your own purpose.
Yeah, exactly.
How do you go about asking someone to be your mentor?
Well, I've had a couple mentors in my life, and the ones that really have been most valuable to me, I didn't ask them to be my mentor per se. I asked them, again, I think of how to pinpoint a mentor first is to find somebody that you really respect, who seems to have it all together, that just seems to be even well regarded in your organization, and just say, would you mind sitting down with me for coffee? I'd love to learn about your career. And the thing is that people will give you time if there's a sincerity around your request for their time. And so one of the things that I like to ask mentors, can we just sit down with coffee? I'd like to learn about your career. And I just ask really great questions about their career development. When people see that you're interested in learning about their experience, they're much more willing and giving of their time. A really great question that I've asked my mentors in the past that I found some really great guidance from is, if you were me at this stage in my career, what would you be doing? And it's always interesting to see the input and advice you have. And then when you close out coffee, just being able to say, would it be okay if I called upon you just for guidance in the future? There are so many talented people out there who would be more than honored by your initiative in asking them for their guidance. People love to talk about themselves.
That's so true. Wow, that was really amazing advice. There was a lot there, and really great presentation. Thank you so much, Angie. We really appreciate it. Just to recap, Angie's book is Spark, How to Lead Yourself and Others to Greater Success. You can get the book. You can see the Amazon link in the resources tab. And the Forbes Magazine offer, you go to www.forbesmagazine.com/levelup and continue the conversation with us. Send us an email. Stay tuned for our next webinar next month. Thank you so much again, Angie. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it, Kim. We'll talk soon, I'm sure.
Yes. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.